So without further ado, let's welcome up Pastor Bill.
All right, thanks so much, Hunter. I'm so glad to be watching today. Listening, I really do believe, like you said just now, that there is a lot of truth that we're going to gain today to be able to create the right culture in our own environment, and that's going to be important. In fact, I just read the other day again, just refreshing on this, some notes by one of the best guys, John Kotter. He teaches at Harvard. He teaches about culture. And I think it was about 25 years ago I heard him make this statement about culture then in one of his books, and thought, here's something that wasn't talked about a lot. Nowadays we talk about it, but 25, 30 years ago no one was speaking of it. But even the truth he had then is true. I've learned a lot since then just by being in and living with it. So today I want to just talk to you about creating the right culture for growth. If you want to grow, there's got to be a certain environment around you that can produce that for you. And so I want to just jump right in. The first thing you need to understand, wherever you are, is the culture around you. We are all in one, whether we know it or not. Everyone is in a particular culture, and sometimes we don't know what that culture is until we bump into something or we break a certain rule or a code that may not be written in the job description, but somehow we realize everybody's looking at us differently, and we say, oh, that's not the way it's done around here. And so we're more aware when we move into a new culture of what the culture is like. We're a lot aware of that then, but the longer we're in one, the less aware we are of what's around us. So I say that you need to understand what's around you. How do you do it? Let me give you a couple of ways. One is look around. Observe the things around you. What gets rewarded? What gets ignored? Who gets included? Who gets excluded? These are all signs as to what the culture has around it and how it operates. And then I also say, listen carefully. Pay attention to the environment that you're in, because you cannot thrive in another environment if you're in this one. So you want to be able to thrive in yours. So that's going to mean basically learning and paying attention to what's around you and how it's working and how things get done. Third along that line is look at what are the people doing. Not what they say they are doing, but what are they actually doing? And that will tell you a lot about what gets rewarded and what gets punished and all that. And then ask the question about your culture. What does that culture value? What's important to it? What is it that makes that culture cohesive? And there ought to be some common ground, some things that we say, this is what we agree on. This is what makes us all know that we're together, united, and this is what brings us about. This is what makes us different and sets apart from some other cultures. And so you need to understand that. You also need to understand your audience. Even if the audience doesn't understand themselves, that is your team or the people that work for you, you have to understand them if you're going to maintain the right culture for growth, because they all bring different perspectives and experiences and skills. And so in order to keep all of that at its maximum potential to help your whole culture, you as the leader have to know those things. So you've got to know your audience. You've got to know who they are. If you want to succeed, I think, in business or in church growth, if you choose that, you've got to have an intentional strategy in your mind and plans for creating a right environment for that team. They can't win without it. And it's your job to figure out, how do I get that? So that's my goal today. So let's talk about it. Let's look at number one, create a culture of assessment. Here's where you start. A culture of assessment is when the culture that we are in drives us to assess ourselves. That is, we need to look at ourselves on a regular basis without it being the supervisor looking over our shoulder, without it being the report card or the quarterly or annual review that tells us something. We need to look regularly and assess our efforts. How am I doing? Assess our processes. How are the things that I'm doing working out? Is this the best process to get what I want? And then assess our results. What are we getting from what work we're doing? And that has to be something an individual has to do. If we leave it up to the employer or the supervisor or the administrator to get all those things, and the employee themselves does not assess themselves, you're going to have a big gap between great performance and average performance. You get your best performance when everybody is assessing themselves. I'd heard years ago about a world-class football player that went on to play in the Pro Bowl, one of the things that they said he did was he would watch the tapes each week of the games that they played the week before, but he would look at himself throughout the whole thing. I mean, he would say, I should have moved off the line faster, I should have done this quicker, and that every week the coach knew when we get the game plays and the film, and the coaches were reviewing it, this one player would always want to look at himself. And he would spend hours, and then when others were out partying on campus, he would be studying films of himself. He was taking the responsibility to assess himself and make himself better. That's why when others got out of school, many of them didn't get the call to go up. He went on up to the pros. But he went because he started early on assessing himself. And I say that's what you got to do. Every individual must want to improve themselves. Your best people, by the way, in any organization, the very best people are the very people who are continually assessing themselves, and then they act on what they find. That is, if they learn these are ways I can improve, they will do it, and you don't even have to stand over and tell them. So what are the questions they ask? Let me give you those. If I'm going to assess myself, I need to ask myself some questions that these questions will help me to do it right. So let me give you a couple of them, okay? Number one, is assessing myself a high priority? That's one of the first questions I want to know. Will I look at myself and say, this is important that I grow, that I find the areas maybe others don't even know, but am I doing well, and if not, how can I? A moment ago, in fact, when Hunter came up and introduced me, he works with me here at BPL, one of the things I've really appreciated about him is right off the bat, there's a young guy who's eager to grow and push himself. But I also noticed that when I'm with him, I was with him the other night on a trip, and he'll always ask after every time we're together, what could I do better? Did you see anything I could improve on? Now that means there's a guy who's already innately got it. He understands I want to check on myself. So that's the first question. Now I want to ask myself another. What are my goals today? You know, what do I want to do today? I may not get a lot done, but if I could get something done, what is my goal today? What problem am I going to solve? Those sort of things. What are my goals? Number two, what did I accomplish today? At the end of the day, I want to know, did I do anything that was worthwhile or added value? Number three, what did I do to earn my pay today? Now, some of you, let me help you with this, that I had a man teach me this one time that was really helpful. He said the people that get a set, guaranteed, standard, weekly, same salary, those are the people that can become lax if not careful. For example, if a man comes out to your house and he's going to fix the plumbing and he doesn't fix it, you don't have to pay him. You say, no, you looked at it, but you didn't do anything, so I'm not paying you to look at it. It's as broke now as it was before you got here. He got paid by the job. But a person who gets a set salary weekly, if they're not careful, they can let a problem go on week after week after week because they're getting their check anyway. They don't get paid always by performance. So they need to constantly be saying to themselves, did I do what I needed to do today to earn my paycheck? The next question would be, what did I learn today? In the midst of all that you're doing, while you're growing, you can't grow if you're not learning. So you have to ask yourself, did I learn anything today? Did somebody teach me something? Did I read something? Did I hear something? Did I see or observe something that caused me to learn something from? And so that's another question he asked if you're assessing yourself. And then another is the question of what problem did I solve today? And that's, every day you're going to have a problem, by the way. This day has barely been started. I've already had to resolve 3 or 4, and I got 2 more in my mind that I'm trying to think of how to resolve before the day's out. So there's at least 4 or 5 problems I think everybody's going to get in a day. But by the end of the day, when you finish up your day, you ought to be able to ask yourself those questions. And those questions are, did I reach my goals? What did I accomplish? Did I earn my pay today? What did I learn today? And did I solve any problem today? Those are the questions you got to ask yourself if you're assessing. Now, what happens if everybody on your team starts doing that? What if they take it serious? What if they really say, we're going to do that, we're going to walk out, whether we're in the church business or we're in the insurance business or the car business or medical or hairstylist or gym, whatever business you're in, if they did that, what will it do for the overall culture? Here's what happens. people will appreciate the value of assessing themselves. They will like the freedom that they have to look at themselves and to say, I can grow in this environment. I can perform in this environment. And they will like it because others are doing it themselves, so they'll grow together. The second that's interesting is when better performance equals better pay or options, they will quickly learn to assess themselves regularly. And it's when they know there's a benefit for them, when they say, hey, the better I am, the more bonuses, the better pay, the more freedom, the more options. And so they'll want to improve because there's a reward personally for them in doing so. And so it's a wonderful environment to have. It also creates a good working environment. When you're in an environment where everybody is trying to grow, when you're in an environment that everybody is suddenly on board with being the best, that's the kind of environment you want to be in. In fact, that's the kind of environment that will squeeze out sometimes the people that don't want to grow. They get in an environment where everybody else is hungry and they're not. They just want to coast. They'll find a way to opt out and find a detour. And then it also does this, though. If you create that culture of assessment in your organization, it'll lift you as a person. I mean, there's something about the person who knows I'm growing, therefore I'm happy. And that's when you grow, that's when you're happy. It's not when you attain something that you're happy. You're happier on the journey. It's not the destination. It's the part as I'm growing on this journey. The more I'm growing, the more alive I feel, the more active and engaged I feel. So that's what it does. All right, number two. How do you create a culture of positive energy? Now I want to do not only a culture of assessment, that's the first, but now I want to create a culture of positive energy. And here's how I do that. I understand this, keep an eye on energy. You need to look at the energy in your organization on a regular basis. You can walk into any company, you can walk into any organization, you can walk into any church, and the one thing you can feel is energy. By the way, you can do that in your home. You can do that among people. Certain people walk up to you and they bring energy. Some people come up and they drain energy. There's energy all around us, so we have to be aware of what's my energy level, what's the energy level of the organization. I've often said this, if your leaders are old, you'll get experience but less energy. The older you get, the harder it is to get that. If your leaders are all young, you'll have energy, but you won't have experience. So you got to have a balance of the two. So in any organization, you want to have both the people with the experience and the people with the energy. And if you can do that, you can keep the energy level higher. And you will keep from going off track because of it, because the experience will keep you focused. Now, you also have to understand this. You've got to place people where they can thrive. Not just if I'm creating the atmosphere of the energy, I also want to make sure that I take those people that are gaining experience and bringing the energy, and I put them in a place where they can thrive. If you set them up for failure, no matter what you do, your whole atmosphere is going to feel it. You want to put people in a place where they get a win. You want to put them in a place where they are set up to do well and find and utilize their best gifts. If they can do that, they're going to add value to the whole team. If you put them in the wrong place, it doesn't matter how much energy, how much experience. If they're not in the right slot, the truth is it's going to be bad on them, and it doesn't help the organization. So how do you create it? How do you create a positive energy or a culture of positive energy? Let me give you a couple of ways. Number one, hire people with it. When you find somebody's got energy, capitalize on it, grab it. Get that person with energy. All you have to do there is target them in the right direction. You may have to give them experience. We do it around staff. We've gone into a mode where we're saying, okay, for a while, we want to go on this way of hiring. And that is hire for heart and train for skill. And the reason is because we need a lot of people with the right heart. You can't, you just can't learn the heart. The heart is generally something you bring. Now, you can bring the skill. So our goal is to find the people that have that energy, have that heart, that have the same kind of values, and bring those. And you can train for the other things. And I do believe if I want a positive energy atmosphere, I got to get some people with positive energy walk in a room. You've seen it. You ever been in a room before where someone was absent that brings energy, and when they walk in, the room just goes up? We call it all the lights go up. I have a friend like that, Ike Reichard, and he'll be speaking for us in a few months. I used to say about Ike, you can be in a room with your back turned and feel it when he walks in the room. I mean, the moment he walks in, you just feel like all the lights went up. And that's what a person with energy does. So the second thing is this: promote people with it. If you've got people that have energy, by all means, don't let it stay in the worst positions. Put them in the roles where people get to see them. It's contagious, by the way. It will have a way of creating from energy, and that's what you want to create, is a transition when it comes to decisions from energy to synergy. And that is when it begins, now everybody's on board. Now it's not just one person who's on fire, but they've ignited a passion in everybody else. So you promote people with it, and you'll create another whole level. And then the third thing is release people with it. If people have the energy, you want them out. You want them to showcase it. You want to be in a place where they make a difference. So you want to put them in the places where they have it. So those are the things I say about those cultures: the culture of assessment, the culture of positive energy. But let me give you the final one, and that is create a culture of leadership development. Now, I say this because as your organization grows, and it will, whatever you're doing, if you take these first steps and apply it and get it down deep in the hearts of your team members, as they begin to grow, now you're going to have to create this leadership development culture. And what that does is that will create what I call a pipeline of leaders for future growth. It will establish other people that they can take on more of the load, make more of the major decisions, and they can help train others. So it's not you doing it alone. You know, you start a company, it's just you're answering the phone, you're doing the work, you're having to do the bills, you're doing all of that, the networking, and then all of a sudden it starts to grow. And the more it grows, you want them growing, and you want them to learn the assessment side, the energy side. And then the development side means you can keep growing as far as you want. In fact, it creates a depth within your team so that if one moves on, you have replacements and keep growing. I always say, don't ever do your job alone. Take somebody with you if you can, or train somebody along beside you. Always have somebody that you're mentoring, because there'll come a time that you'll want to do even some other things, but it's hard to be fully engaged if you're holding on to this. But if you have somebody beside you that's eager and growing and you've developed, they can take on that while you take on more, and together both of you win. And so that's the way you grow. And then the last one along that line is understand this truth. It's a fact of life. Some laws you can't change. The organization can only grow as large as the number of leaders it produces. It can only grow that large. It cannot grow larger. And a glass will only hold X amount of liquid. No matter how much you put in there, it's only going to hold X amount. Your container is that. Your organization will only grow to the level of leaders that you produce. So you've got to constantly be producing leaders. And when you're producing leaders, they will learn those skills so that when they're put in certain areas, they will keep things up, accessible, in the assessing mode, in the energy mode, and also in the growth mode. So it all comes together. Those are the three things I tell you to do when we talk about creating the right culture for growth. And if you'll do those three things alone, I promise you, will change the game for you. I'm thankful that you listened today. I hope you'll apply it. Now, that's the key. Take it, use it, and if you'll apply it, I promise you, you'll be one of those giving the testimony of it. Hey, that worked. We've got a culture here that this thing is making a difference. And it can, and I know you will.